We're delighted to welcome Tilda Allie to Totally Wired. How are you doing, Tilda?
I'm good. Yeah, very good.
Thank you so much for coming down, performing that session. The biggest one-person session I think we've ever had, it's safe to say. I mean, obviously for the radio you wouldn't have seen it, but if you head over to YouTube, Brightonsfinest.com, you'll see a big old one-woman show.
Yes, it is very much a one-woman show.
Is that a recent setup, or is that something you've always been doing before the band?
No, when I was still down here in Brighton, I tried lots of different setups, and at that point I wasn't able to actually produce music. So I was sort of relying on having people that could play the music that I was writing. So therefore I had a quite big setup. It started off with like guitar, keys, drums, and bass, and then that grew to a bigger setup with BVs, and it just got really difficult. I felt to handle 7 people when it was all under my name, and the sound turned into be slightly more kind of rocky, I guess, which it wasn't what I was trying to achieve. So it ended, and then I started doing everything myself, basically. So it was kind of like a necessity that it happened that way.
And completely self-taught? And do you produce your stuff now?
Yes, everything, yeah. When it comes to production, it's definitely I'm mostly self-taught. I've tried to do like online courses and things like that, but I find myself just getting distracted and quite bored. So I end up just sort of trying things out on whether it's Ableton or Logic, and kind of through creating, learning how to actually produce. That's how it worked for me.
And you performed Rocket Me High just then for us?
Yes.
The latest single?
Yes.
We played it on the radio, of course.
Yeah.
It's a great tune, really nice
Thank
song.
you.
Sort of got a bit of a trip-hoppy vibe to it,
yeah.
Those drums especially. Tell me about how that came about.
So I wrote all of the songs that's coming out on this EP in November. I wrote all of them really throughout lockdown, just before I kind of moved up to London, and then throughout that period. And I guess I felt like I was quite very disconnected from like my purpose and really what I was trying to do and achieve with being in London, right? I think a lot of us who are in the creative field felt that way. So all of these songs came out from that kind of feeling of like, what is the meaning? Like, why am I even here? And Rocket Me High is the kind of starting point of that journey, where I am kind of realizing through the song, because it's kind of like a conversation with myself, right? That nothing more than what I already have is gonna make me feel better, and that's what the title means. Rocket Me High is like needing something to shake you alive, to feel something, but actually realizing it's all happening now. Kind of that kind of journey of the present moment, if that makes sense.
And is that the first single to be heard from the new EP?
Yes, it is, yeah. And then there's another 4 tracks coming out as well.
And you are launching it at a gig in the Hootananny in Brixton, you told us?
Yeah.
And that's going to be full band?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm working towards. So yeah, it's going to be violin, cello. I mean, now I'm saying it, so it's going to have to happen, right? I'm already speaking to people, and I've already done the set with strings, which is so beautiful, rather than having to have it programmed and me triggering it. So it's going to be that, and then live drums, BVs, percussion. It's just all of my friends, basically, together in a band.
Wow, that's a really exciting thing. I mean, It's something that it's going to take a lot of rehearsal time as well. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that you had a band before. It must have been having a 7-piece in places in Brighton when you're playing in venues. I find that there's a lot of small stages, a lot of dingy rooms too. You sometimes see bands and artists where you think this room does not suit the sort of music that they're making. Did you find that at all? Yeah,
absolutely. And also that the sound just wouldn't translate very well. It maybe would have worked better for like an acoustic act or a 3-piece, but then suddenly you have so much instrument that the sound just bounces every direction, and you might listen back to what you've done and you're like, that just sounds a bit crap. you know.
And did you find when you started doing solo stuff that it was better?
Well, this is a funny one because it depends on how I choose to do the setup, because I don't always do it the same way. I'm one of those people who get kind of bored of my own music a lot, so I have to always change up a little bit. So this is a setup that I've only had for the past maybe 2 months. And sometimes I have only a MIDI controller, which makes it easier, I think, for the sound engineer when there's less stuff coming out of my interface.
Yeah.
So it's easier in terms of I have just myself to worry about. But if you don't have a nice sound system, the bass and the drums very often end up coming out sounding quite weak. So that was really nice to be here to feel that wasn't the case. But if I play small venues, it can be a bit like sounds like I'm playing MP3 songs through my laptop.
And it sounded really lovely.
Thank you.
Everything sort of had its moment. What was the other track that you played? Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so this is really something that came out of playing around with stuff, and I like this song because it's more an invite to show what I can do with the technicality of stuff. It's called I Am Here, and it's more like a chant than a song, as you probably kind of got. And I'm sort of chanting, I am here, and I'm never going to leave, because I have had moments where I felt like I really don't want to be here. And without sounding way too depressing, but I don't always feel like I understand my purpose, and that's something I struggle with. So this becomes like a chant and a mantra that I keep on telling myself in order to feel more present and like I am supposed to be here, and I'm hoping that can help someone else who might be in that situation. So that's kind of how that song came about. And obviously I'm triggering lots of different things. I'm playing around with some synth parts. I have pre-programmed some drums that's coming out, playing around a lot with the vocals to create kind of another dimension and a little more of that kind of ambient vibe.
I mean, it was really powerful and quite empowering, especially hearing the description and how that song came about. Is that going to be on the EP?
It's actually not going to be on the EP.
It's not going to be on the EP?
No, it's not going to be on the EP.
Just an unreleased exclusive for us then.
It is kind of like the introduction. So whenever I play live, this is what people will hear the first, and I will be able to loop this for as long as I want. So it's me trying to gauge if people like trying to grab them,
I suppose it drags people in, doesn't it?
And be like, what is this? Because it is very much a continuous thing, and then I can play around with it. So I want it to be more of a live piece, which is why it's quite exciting to play it today, because it's something that isn't recorded and probably won't be, because it kind of lives in that kind of place of being live and ever changing. That's
great. And what's the EP going to be called, and when does it come out?
I'm like, yes, ask me more questions. It's going to be called IKIGAI. IKIGAI is a Japanese philosophy which stands for reason to live, which again is quite it fits very well with what I'm trying to say. And it's a book that I read throughout lockdown, and I read a lot of kind of spiritual texts and dived into philosophy because I was kind of losing the grip a bit. And this really helped me. And it's like 4 different sort of components that you need to combine in order to find this kind of reason for being and living. I can't remember exactly what part of the word means what, but I think Iki means life and Gai means being. So I'm borrowing that word, but I also, it's a philosophy that I very much live by, and I hope that if people listen to this, they might want to dive into knowing a bit more what Ikigai is, and it might help them to feel a bit more settled and grounded in themselves.
Well, I already want to dive into it. So.
It's amazing, actually.
And I hope everyone else does. Thank you so much for that. Good luck with the EP.
Thank you.
And good luck with the Brixton gig.
Thank you.
What date is that? Have you got a date yet?
Yeah, 9th of I was going to say 9th of June. 9th of November. 9th of June is my birthday.
That would have been a nice day.
Yeah, now
still.
everyone can say happy birthday to me. No, 9th of November at the Hootananny's in Brixton.
Perfect. Tilda Allie, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.